Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. From research to the enterprise, our customers rely on us for the ultimate Rocky Linux, Werewolf, and Apptainer support escalation. We provide deep development capabilities and solutions, all delivered in the collaborative spirit of open source.
Okay, well, hey, Greg, thank you so much for being here today with me. I'm pretty excited, actually, to be talking with you about Ascender and specifically Ansible and the difference between import and include.
Well, Rose, it's good to be here with you as well. This one is for all of my Ansible nerds. Shout out to all my Ansible nerds out there, because this one's a little bit deeper than just kind of surface level. This is going to be what you're going to run into once you've been automating for a minute. And you also said something there, the difference between import and include, but also I was just thinking, like, I've actually had it asked before, what's the difference between Ansible and Ascender itself? Do you know the answer to that, Rose?
I hope I do. I should know the answer to that. Should I not?
I think the jury wants to hear your definition.
Okay,
Judge,
absolutely.
you gonna allow it? Yeah, he's gonna allow it. Let's hear it.
Judge has allowed. Perfect. So my understanding of Ansible is that it is a program written in Python, I believe, where you can create playbooks that can do stuff for you. So you create a playbook in Ansible and it does any number of tasks that you want it to do. Ascender, on the other hand, is the name of CIQ's automation platform that basically allows you kind of like a one-stop shop, like a place, a graphical interface to manage all of your playbooks.
Rock and roll, man. I think that's a pretty decent definition. You are 100% correct. Yeah, so Ansible is the most popular open source automation toolkit that exists out there. Like you said, it's a program that does consume automation scripts we refer to as playbooks. So you nailed that as well. Ascender is really, think of it as, or at least this is the way I think of it, as like an air traffic controller for your automation, right? You've got lots of different people in your environment that want to automate, and who gets to do what, when, and where, like securely, make sure that there's safety measures around all that stuff. That's what Ascender does. So really, under the engine, it's running Ansible. So it's essentially an enterprise interface for running your Ansible playbooks, just like you said. But it allows your teams to securely share between each other, different silos, not just individuals, right? Because a lot of times, if I'm on the network team, we're going to be sharing a ton of automation in there, and we want to be able to safely share that with the operations people. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying it's like forbidden love, like Montagues and Capulets, like networking and operations, but it's just, you know, the brains kind of function differently. And so, you know, people tend to be a little bit more protective of their infrastructure. So it allows you to really do that, but at enterprise scale. So it gives you all those tools. Now, if you do want to go a little bit more down the rabbit hole, we're talking about Ansible. A lot of what I do is education and enablement. Like, that's one of my favorite things. I found that's one of my passions. I don't know that it's a calling, because I don't know. I don't do it for an all-day, everyday living, but I really enjoy doing it. And so,
well, you're also really good at it. So that's a
really
nice
good enough
combination.
Sometimes good enough is all you need, and that's definitely something I've worked in some high intensity environments where things are constantly moving at you, and you're essentially doing triage, right? Like, you're just always putting out fires and things like that. And so I learned that sometimes good is good enough, and you get that thing in place. Or another fun saying we used to have was a temporary fix is the most permanent solution. So you put some duct tape on something, and then you'll come back 2 years from now, maybe, if you're lucky, to do it the right way. Sometimes it's just the way it goes.
Awesome.
Sometimes it's just the way. That's why I refer to Ansible often as DevOps duct tape, because it kind of holds a lot of my infrastructure together. Whether I should be using it in the way that I do or not, that's, you know, neither here nor there. But when you're talking about Ansible, there are some little gotchas, some little odd things here and there that I run into. And whenever I run into them and I finally do take the time to figure them out, I like to document it and share it out with the world. And I would encourage everybody else to do the same as well. But import and include. So there are kind of 3 different times you can use those. Is generally going to be your, and I'm referring to my notes, I'm cheating over here. You're either going to import or include tasks, roles, or playbooks, right? We already discussed playbooks. Those are automation scripts. Roles are essentially abstracted portions of a playbook that you kind of do it in that fashion to make it reusable. So if you are familiar with programs like a function or a subroutine, it's just something you can kind of call and plug into lots of different playbooks, right? So in my playbook, I can import or include a role as well. And then tasks, those are the individual pieces of automation I'm going to run. So I can include or import a task. Now, honestly, what's the difference between import and include? And that's what I ran into. And to me, they felt very interchangeable. And I looked up the definition. And so by the definition, the textbook definition, import is static, include is dynamic, right? So you think dynamic sounds better to me anyway. And the way it really reads in the documentation, and just because the documentation says one thing, when you actually put it into practice, could be completely different, right? And this is the case too, right? And also it could be true at the time the documentation was written, and maybe nobody's bothered to update it. Yeah, that stuff happens as well, right?
Yes.
So import, the idea being, I'm going to import, which is static. Say I'm importing a role. Well, all the variables and things like that, you would think get processed before the playbook executes. That's what it says. It'll process everything before the playbook executes.
What it says.
So if you're using variables or things like that, it's just going to essentially use what's there at the time the playbook's executed. Wherein most of my playbooks are super flexible and dynamic, so I'm gathering information as it's running. And if I hit to that next portion where I've flexibly gathered a bunch of information and now I want to hit this import, I can't do that anymore, right? That's initially what I thought. Well, I concocted a bunch of tests. I literally wasted an hour and a half trying to make it fail in this very specific way that the documentation says it would, and I couldn't make it happen. So at the end of the day, once you do all of this and you dig and dig and dig, I've came up with a little list of what are the real differences. And I'm going to say default, go with the flexible one, right? So that's kind of...
Which is import. Include.
Oh.
Yes.
Include. Yeah. Include is the
That's
dynamic
the flexible one. Okay.
Yeah. So just default to include. And what it really comes down to is this. If you import, you can't use loops. And loops mean I can run a task over and over, and I can iterate over a list of stuff. So if you're doing import, which is the static, you can't do loops. So for me, most all of my automations are going to include loops somewhere in there, and I need them to be as dynamic as possible. So I don't do it. So just go with include unless you run into an issue. And I can read out the very specific gotchas in here. You can't use start at task, which is an option that you run from the command line, which I have literally never used. You can't notify a trigger or handler name from inside a dynamic include, which I have never run into that problem. What else is in here? You can't use dash list tags for output. So literally the like 4 caveats I have never run into once. So I'm just going to say by default, use include. Don't get confused. Don't run into errors. Just use include and you're good. So I do have an accompanying blog post that is about to go out that walks through all the detail. It even shows you all of me trying to figure out a way to produce these errors, and it's just like almost impossible to make it work the way the documentation says. But if you really just narrow it down to these 2 little options, just go with include, Rose.
I like it when you just keep things simple, man. You know, it's like
TLDR.
TLDR.
Right?
So I actually looked up, I chat GPT'd it before our little session here. Yes. So I was like, well, maybe I can get like some like basic understanding. Of course, then I said it wrong, but that was because I was looking at it wrong. I was looking at the top part where it said import. And it said, would you like a little, story or an analogy to make it easier to understand of the import versus include? And I said, sure. So would you be interested in hearing the little analogy?
I would, but let me preface it with, whenever I was trying to produce this error and find this out, and I couldn't make it work, I started asking ChatGPT myself, and all of its examples were incorrect. So
really,
yes, it was hallucinating everything because it was going purely based on the documentation. And if you follow just the documentation, it's not accurate in what you're trying to do.
Oh,
so
that
feel
is
free.
Fascinating.
Let's hear what it says.
That also kind of brings up the idea and the value in my mind, and maybe I am incorrect, of having something like a sender where you can practice your playbooks, right? Can't you do that in a sender? You can kind of test them out, and if they are good, then continue on, but if they fail, then they don't do anything.
Yes, you can make things function like that. So in it's both Ansible and Ascender. It's a core component of both of those. You can operate your playbooks in one of two modes. One is going to be a run mode, which, hey, perform all these actions, or you can run it in a check mode. I'm doing air quotes here, a check mode. And that essentially says, pretend as if you're going to perform these functions and let's see what happens. But there's a caveat in it. There's always an asterisk, right? With everything in life. And certainly with this as well, because whenever you are performing something in check mode, say I have the third task in the list is to run some shell command to gather information. Like I just want to check to see something that's on there. Well, a shell command, it's going to assume that always makes a change because it doesn't know one way or the other. So it won't run that, which means it won't gather the data, which means if you needed to check that data or use that data for following tasks, they're all going to fail. So you have to kind of engineer your playbook around that. Now, if you're just purely doing data gathering and you know it's not going to make any substantive change to your system, you can, for that individual task, you could tell it never run in check mode. So it will always gather that. But you see how you start having to kind of go down the rabbit hole with some of this stuff, depending on what you're trying to do. But to that end, you were talking about test this stuff. I always recommend everybody have a test environment. There's at least in network engineering, there was this old saying, everybody's got a test network, not everybody's got a production one also. In that, you've only got the one network, everything is test and prod. So with systems like this, and with the abundance and ease of just creating a VM, like with Ascender, my test ones are, I will just spin up a Rocky VM and I will install Ascender on K3S right there. It takes 15 minutes to run and it's up and I don't have to think about it or really turn any knobs or do anything. And I've got a fully fledged test system there that I can hammer away at various things. There's almost no excuse not to have kind of a test environment for you to try all this stuff in. And virtually all of the customers, pretty much all of them I've worked with over time, the Fortune 500s, they all have kind of at least a test and a production. Now you can segregate stuff inside your one Ascender where you have, you're just operating against test stuff and development stuff and production stuff. But some people like to physically separate those out. There is no mistake. I am logged into the development Ascender instance. No production stuff ever gets on this box, right? So it's like you can kind of physically isolate those things as much as possible. But again, it's up to you. However you want to do it. People have said, can you give me like a best practice for this design or that design? And that's, I can't. I'd have to know what your environment looks like because literally I've never seen two customers do the same thing in the same way. And they usually have good reasons why they have differences, right? Could be compliance, could be just corporate policy, could be personal preference, right? It's like I would go into some environments and they were all one manufacturer. Well, it's like, well, why would you do it that way? Well, because we educate our people on this one vendor's piece of equipment, so we know everybody knows it. And you start mixing and matching a little bit difficult, right? There's always some specific reason people do it, and it's usually a good one.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. That really, it reminds me that we are going to be having, an Ascender workshop coming up at the end of the month. So that's definitely something that we want you guys to have on your calendars. My understanding, Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're going to be doing those hopefully at least every couple of months, every month, ideally. Every couple months, putting out some workshops to get people kind of involved. Just as you said, might need a little help, a little guidance. But we also do have the Ascender installer. So let's put that link in the comments below so that people can. That was such good advice that you gave about just, hey, spin up a VM. You know what I mean? Download the Ascender. You got the installer right there. We've made it really easy for you. Like, let it do its work and then hop in and just test things out.
And to that end, yes, you are correct. I believe we're going to have one scheduled every month, and we're going to cycle between different ones, right? So this first one's going to be kind of your bog standard Linux. It's going to be focused on enterprise Linux, but really any Linux. And then the next one is going to be networking focused for all my networking peeps out there as well. So you can kind of get in there and learn to turn the wrenches. But it also made me think of, when you're talking about that, is that I've, with the installer, it is really easy to get one stood up and running. And I've had somebody say, oh, okay, I've got it installed. Now what do? And that's where the workshop can be really great, because genuinely we'll take you from never even having heard of Ansible all the way through writing those playbooks, write the automation scripts, and putting them into Ascender and then firing them off, right? Using those skills to actually build automations and run them kind of in an enterprise fashion. So that is over the course of a single day, believe it or not. We give everybody their own little environment. You've got your own workstation in there. It'll be probably me doing kind of live some slide decking, and then we will have the live lab portion. We go back and forth all the way through. And oftentimes we'll have one of our automation gurus kind of watching the chat, helping out as we go to kind of fill in the blanks on all of that stuff. But it's a really good way to get up and moving. And even if you are familiar with Ansible and you're trying to make the transition, this can really help. Even if you're familiar with all of it, I'm willing to bet you'll learn something, because I've done these workshops with people who've been automating with an AWX derivative for a couple of years. And I usually ask those folks, did you pick anything up? And the answer is usually yes. So I'm not saying I'm the biggest expert. I just know that I've seen it done by a lot of different people. And so we have a lot of tips and tricks that we can offer you guys in your environments.
Yeah, that's great. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, bros, we got to get into automation. We got to start automating. We really got to expand our automation footprint. Like, we're falling behind. So, no need to do that. No need to stress. Come join us for an automation workshop, Greg. I'm really, really excited that you're put that together. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's an army of people over here making all this stuff happen. I just get to be the one right at the very end that you see. So I'm happy to take all the credit for it, for sure.
Here you go. Yes, and thank you to everyone else in all of the various open source communities inside of CIQ and outside that are making all of this happen. Okay, so here we are. Cookbook analogy. The difference between import and include in Ansible. Imagine that you're a chef preparing a meal, and you have a main recipe book, your playbook. You also have other recipe pages, tasks, playbooks, or roles that you may need to reference. For import, this is like the pre-printed ingredients and steps. It is static. Before you start cooking, you print all of the necessary recipe pages and insert them into your main recipe book. Everything is planned before you even start. Even if you don't need a particular recipe step, it's still there. For example, you're making a cake, and before starting, you print and attach the frosting recipe inside the cake recipe book. Whether or not you actually make the frosting, it's already part of the recipe. Now, that was for import. Now, include, on the other hand, is like asking the sous chef at runtime. It is dynamic. So instead of printing everything ahead of time, you call your sous chef and ask for a recipe only if needed. If you don't need a recipe, you won't get it. The decision happens while cooking. For example, you're making pasta and you ask your sous chef, hey, is the guest vegetarian? If yes, they hand you a vegetarian recipe. If no, they give you a meat sauce recipe. You don't print both recipes in advance. You include the right ones when you need it. Final takeaway. Import is like adding all recipes into your book before cooking. It's static and pre-planned. Include is like asking for a recipe while you're cooking based on the situation. It's dynamic and flexible.
We'll say that works. I guess if you had a lot of potential includes, or rather, and you're using conditionals, it's going to import everything ahead of time anyway, just in case, and so consume a little bit more RAM. I don't know. I mean, I guess it kind of works. Yeah, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, but like, rubber meets the road when you actually put that into effect in automation. Like, that's the thing that ChatGPT can't really articulate. Like, what is the real difference in here? Because I went round and round with it, just curious to see if it could get me someplace, and it never actually could. But I ended up finding, some documentation that some separate stuff that was a little bit more to the point. But I still like it. It's still a fun analogy.
Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it.
For sure.
I love that, like, what it went to was cooking too. I was like, oh yeah, love that. Tell me all about it. That was fun. Okay, great. So we've got a couple of takeaways from our time together. One is that, first of all, thank you, Greg, for all of your time and all the work that you do behind the scenes here for Ascender and for our customers. Yes, and many other projects that you are on. So thank you. Thank you for your time being here. We also have an installer. So Ascender is open source and free to download, to use. Grab the installer. We'll put the link. It's right down there for you. Try it out. We also have a workshop coming up at the end of this month and every month thereafter, as long as Greg will be here with us, which is forever, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm grooming you to take over. So
there you go. Okay.
You're going to watch the first couple and then it's you after that, bud.
Okay. Well, get in while he's teaching the class. That is my recommendation. Awesome. So yes, we'll be doing lots of webinars. So if you guys want to more information about that, you feel free to go to our website and you can send us an email, fill out any one of those forms, and it will come right to me anyway. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the people with about?
I love hearing from people. I love interaction. I want feedback. If you need help in any way, let me know. And so I'm going to dare everyone to email me at gsowell@ciq.com. Let's see. Are you brave enough? Are you going to do it?
Triple double dog dare.
That's right. Slight breach of etiquette. And I skipped the double dog. You went straight to triple. But yeah, there we are.
That's awesome. Yes, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, comments, right? You want to talk about his mustache, anything. He likes it.
For sure. Holler at me.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you in the workshop at the end of the month. Bye.